So for me, it is pretty much the end of this 2-week trip through Botswana, Zimbabwe and Namibia. But for you, it's just the beginning of this video. Let's talk about all the things that have happened and all the beautiful things I saw. The Okavango Delta, one of Africa's most extraordinary landscapes, a vast, ever-changing wetland teeming with life. From the thundering Victoria Falls in Zimbabwe to the quiet channels and floodplains of Botswana, this self-drive safari was a journey deep into the wild. For 2 weeks, we followed challenging roads, slept in rooftop tents and open bush huts, and woke with the first light as nocturnal calls gave way to birdsong. We met elephants on dusty roads, watched lions at dawn, and drifted through the delta in a traditional mokoro. This was adventure, discovery, and raw nature at its finest. So, make yourself a cup of tea, sit back and come with me to the Okavango Delta. At the beginning of this trip, we started in Vic Falls in Zimbabwe. We landed there after a very long flight, rather 3 flights. But all was well when we were watching the Victoria Falls from the plane, and then the next day proceeded to, actually no, I think the same day we proceeded to go and check them out. While they are worldwide known as the Victoria Falls, the waterfall's local name is Mosi-oa-Tunya, which translates to the smoke that thunders. They lie right on the border between Zimbabwe and Zambia, with the Zambezi River plunging into a massive gorge that's 108 meters deep. Even more impressive is its width of more than 1,700 meters, which makes it the world's largest sheet of falling water. On the very afternoon we landed, my mom, David and I went to see the falls on foot. There's a path that runs along the opposite side, giving some stunning views. You also get completely soaked from the spray. The noise of the water crashing down was incredible, and the sheer size of the falls was hard to believe. But if you want an even more dramatic view, you have to go higher. My dad, together with our Austrian friends Johann and Anja, who joined us for the first week, went on a helicopter ride. From up there, you can really see the scale of the Victoria Falls. After an exhilarating first day in southern Africa, we stayed at Batonka Guest Lodge for the night and discussed all our plans for the upcoming 2 weeks over dinner. The next morning, we revisited the Victoria Falls once more. This time, we crossed into Zambia via the Victoria Falls Bridge. It's a colonial-era steel arch bridge suspended over the gorge. David wanted to bungee jump, and the jump platform is technically on the Zambian side. 111 meters of free fall toward the mighty Zambezi below, definitely not for the faint of heart. But David couldn't miss the chance to jump off one of the 7 world wonders. And he didn't hesitate for a second.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1,
While my mom and I watched in awe from a distance.
Look at that view! Zambezi River!
After this exciting start in Vic Falls, it was time to leave Zimbabwe and Zambia behind and make our way towards Botswana. A shuttle drove us across the Kazungula border, where 4 countries meet: Botswana, Zambia, Zimbabwe and Namibia. It's the only international quadrupoint in the world. Soon we arrived in Kasane, a small town right by the Chobe River, and the place where our self-drive adventure would truly begin. To get our rentals, we had to first cross into Botswana. Since we were now in Zimbabwe, we took a bus transfer to cross the border, and boy was it some work to get to Botswana. Eventually though, after disinfecting all of our shoes, the bus that we were driving in and getting through multiple immigration steps, we did get to Botswana and also get our rentals. We rented the vehicles from Brit's campus, and before we set off, we were given a detailed walk around. They explained how to drive in deep sand, how to use the diff lock and low gears, and most importantly, how to set up camp safely. We were now properly equipped for our adventures. Botswana is a massive country, but it is probably most known for its Okavango Delta, which is a large body of water, or rather a river, that simply disappears into the land. It is, I believe, the only delta in all of Africa that does not end in the ocean, as most other rivers do. It is this delta that was the goal of our trip. Our route would take us all the way around it, with multiple stops along the rivers that are full of wildlife. But before heading straight into the bush, we spent 2 nights at Kwalape Safari Lodge. The transfer into Botswana and collecting the rental Hilux had taken most of the day, and the following morning was packed with activities. The lodge was the perfect place to prepare and adjust to the rhythm of Botswana, where the sun sets around 6 every evening. At Kwalape, we even got to enjoy a traditional San Bushman performance. Their music and dancing under the night sky gave us a taste of the culture before we set off into the wilderness. Now, of course, the goal of this kind of a trip is to see lots and lots of wildlife. And while we did self-driven game drives as well, we really wanted to experience a game drive also from a professional game ranger. One that knows all of the spots where animals come in the morning or come in the evening. And so we were very lucky to see lions on our first early morning game drive. Our first full day in Botswana began at 5 a.m. when our guide took us into the northern part of Chobe National Park. Unlike in South Africa, there are no fences around Botswana's national parks. The animals are free to roam, crossing into neighboring parks and even other countries. This creates one of the largest conservation areas in the world, where wildlife can live as naturally as they are meant to. Within minutes, we came across a pride of lions on their morning stroll. It consisted of mostly female lions and a few young males treading through the thick bush on their way to look for prey. We followed them with our safari guide for a while to capture beautiful photographs and see their natural behavior. It was stunning to see the young lions play in the morning sun. When the leading female lion finally started stalking prey, we left them to their business so as not to disturb their hunt. I've always had a soft spot for big cats, and having my own little lions at home makes seeing the big ones even more exciting. Spotting lions first thing in the morning was unforgettable, but Botswana has so much more to offer. On that same drive, we came across elephants, different antelope species, and a wide variety of birds like this hooded vulture. Having seen lots of wildlife on land, we also wanted to see the perspective from the water. Because it is the Okavango Delta and because there's loads of rivers, we decided to also check out a boat tour. And lots of wildlife we did see on that boat tour as well. It's one thing to see animals on land, but from the water you see a different side of them. Our boat tour guide was phenomenal at getting us very close to animals in water, and we were impressed with his skill to identify animals, especially birds, even from a distance, with ease. We got to see hippos up close and could even hear the bull loudly telling us to back off. The boat ride was an incredible experience for us. While I had been on many safari drives before, I had never been on a safari boat ride, and I'm very happy we got to do it. With our first day of exploring done, we spent one more night at Khwai Lodge before we left lodge life behind and entered the world of real bush camping. On the next day, our camping trip finally started, but before we took to the road to Muchenye, we needed to stock up on some groceries in Kasane. Of course, one of the most important parts of camping is the food. Now, as a South African, I'd say a braai, is what we call it, is the best way to end an incredibly adventurous day, for instance, from a game drive. Once we found a nice big supermarket, we stocked up our fridge and the entire canopy with food, mostly rusks and delicious meat and fruit and veg, of course, but also just snacks and delicious things that I already know from South Africa. For instance, the breakfast rusks that we always have. With the car fully packed and the fridge filled to the brim, we finally hit the road to Muchenye campsite, about 70 kilometers west of Kasane, along the edge of Chobe National Park. At Muchenye campsite, we set up our rooftop tents for the first time and brought structure to our fridges and canopies. We lit our first fire and had a proper braai. And finally, To end the day, we enjoyed the orange and red colors of an African sunset. In the early morning of the next day, we joined a walking bird safari. Our guide, Stone, had invited us the evening before. Equipped with binoculars and our animal identification booklet, we followed in his footsteps and ticked off every bird we could see. Stone was incredible. He could identify birds just by their calls, even while they were flying overhead. Some of the birds I already knew from South Africa, while others were unique to this region or only visit during certain seasons. What I enjoyed most about this walking bird safari was finally being able to match familiar calls to birds I'd only ever heard but never seen up close. After the bird walk, it was time to pack up and hit the road again. This time we were crossing the Ngoma border into Namibia. This region is known as the Caprivi Strip, a narrow stretch of land in northern Namibia, wedged between Angola, Botswana and Zambia. Our first destination here was bush camp by Camp Kwando. To reach it, we needed to tackle more than 200 kilometers of road. Crossing the Ngoma border post wasn't exactly a quick process. There were several checks, a few forms to fill out and even a visa needed to enter Namibia. First, we cleared the exit control when leaving Botswana, then went through customs on the Namibian side. It took us nearly an hour to get through, even though there were hardly any other travelers. But eventually we made it and continued our drive through the Caprivi Strip, snacking on a few South African treats we were lucky to find in local shops. After a few hours on the road, we reached the turnoff into the bush leading to bush camp by Camp Kwando. The sandy tracks winding through the bushveld with the sun dropping low on the horizon looked like something straight out of a film. We knew we were about to find a hidden gem, and we were right. The bush camp turned out to be a wild, unfenced plot of land with a rustic open-air bathroom and just us, completely surrounded by nature. With daylight fading fast, we gathered wood for the braai and set up our rooftop tents on the trusty Toyota Hilux. By now, we were getting the hang of setting up camp quickly and efficiently. By the time we finally sat down to eat, it was only 6:30 and already pitch dark. The day was done, and I was overjoyed to fall asleep to the sounds of the wild. Just a thin mosquito net between me and the night. The next morning was slow, awoken by the sound of ring-necked doves, willow warblers and the odd grey go-away bird, or kwerfwoel as they are called in Afrikaans. I got up for a short walk to enjoy their songs before starting the day. Take a moment to listen to the sounds of the African bushveld with me. And as the bush slowly woke up around us, so did our appetites. Time for breakfast. This is a classic Afrikaans breakfast. It's an oma and a coffee or a tea. Dunk it in, leave it in for a few seconds, and once it's soft, Instead of rushing off to explore, we decided to stay put for once. We were settling in for 2 nights at this quiet camp. The area felt forgotten, and we were the only guests, with just one staff member appearing twice a day to light the fire in our donkey for hot shower water. On this day, I finally had the time to give a proper introduction to our rented Toyota Hilux. So let me show you. Hello and welcome to another beautiful day, but I'm not in the Austrian Alps, I am in the southern hemisphere. I'm doing a 2-week trip through Namibia, Botswana and Zimbabwe, and I'm in this really cool Toyota Hilux with a tent on top doing safaris. It's a 2.4 litre turbo diesel. It is an all-wheel drive vehicle, it has high and low gears, and it has a rear diff lock. And now let's take a quick look inside. So this is the single cabin version. You open the door, you can see it's just a normal, good old Toyota. We have the canopy as well. These are our suitcases. We have a fridge with freezer function as well. From the back you can see this really nice closing function, and we do have 2 spare wheels, one on the back here and one at the bottom. We also have some water coming out here. It's I think a 40-litre tank. And at the top we have our tent, perfect for 2 persons. And that's pretty much what it looks like for us. All you need for a nice 2-week holiday in the southern hemisphere. That night we enjoyed another braai under a sky full of stars, sharing good wine and even better conversation. Later, we retreated to our tents, falling asleep to the sounds of hippos grazing nearby. The next morning, it was time to pack up and head to our next destination. We enjoyed a quick breakfast as the sun came up, then took down our rooftop tents and packed the Hilux canopies, securing everything properly for the road ahead. All 3 bakkies pulled out in convoy one last time. It would be our final day traveling as a group of 6. Later, we'd part ways with our Austrian friends Johann and Anja, leaving just my parents, David and me in 2 vehicles. With everything loaded, we set off towards the east, ready to tackle another 217 kilometers. Today, we would continue our journey through the Caprivi strip towards a special place on the Okavango River. The long, empty road through Namibia felt worlds away from the bustle of the Austrian Alps, hardly a village in sight for vast stretches. To keep us going, we were lucky to have a good supply of biltong, South Africa's famous cured meat. Compared to Botswana, at least the Caprivi strip of Namibia felt even more empty, I would say. There were people, small villages everywhere, but it felt more left alone. I really enjoyed that, definitely, but we didn't see as much wildlife as we expected, though we were for the most part driving on just that one road that was available. On our way to Ngepi camp, we stopped at a place called White Sands, a small resort next to the Popa Falls. Though called falls, they're really more of a gentle rapid, especially after seeing Victoria Falls earlier on the trip. This is where the Okavango Delta begins on the Namibian side, just 30 kilometers from the Botswana border. The resort was quiet, almost empty, and offered a perfect spot to stretch our legs. We walked down to the river, watched the wide waters roll over the rocks, and enjoyed a cold appetizer or grapetizer at the bar overlooking the water. It turned into one of those unplanned stops that becomes a quiet little highlight. Our last relaxed moment together as a group of 6. As afternoon approached, it was time to continue the final stretch towards Ngepi camp. At the turnoff, we waved goodbye to Johann and Anja. Next time we'd see them would be back in Austria. From now on, it was just 2 cars traveling around the Okavango Delta. So there's lots of small children here, and they really like sweets, and we have some leftovers, so we're giving them marshmallows, and they're very happy about it. Botswana, but also Namibia, and really all of the countries in Africa that I've been to have incredibly long stretches of roads. So what that meant is lots and lots of driving through good tar roads that are similar to Austria, I would say, but also to tar roads with loads of potholes, making it incredibly difficult to drive, and also making it quite tiresome. But also dirt roads, sandy roads that I already know from South Africa, but finally we were equipped with the correct car. Because if you have seen the DKW videos on my channel, then you will know that in a small, very old car from the 1960s, that is not as much fun. But in these rentals, the Toyota Hilux, it was relatively smooth, I would say. The road leading to Ngepi camp gave us quite a welcome. First, we passed a group of local kids dancing playfully at the roadside. Then we reached a sign offering a choice between a 2x4 road and a 4x4 road. Naturally, we chose the 4x4 route to see what the Hilux could do, only to realize that the owners were poking fun at enthusiastic overlanders determined to justify their fancy diff locks. Check out this sign.
All drivers of 4x4, engage forward drive, select low range, lock all hubs in diff, cross your fingers, everyone else drive normally. Don't worry, forward drive is not needed, but it helps them justify the cost of buying a higher one.
They're talking about us. The joke was brilliant, though ironically, the last stretch did require a bit of power. Deep, muddy ruts showed exactly what the road becomes during the rainy seasons or when the delta floods. Finally, we arrived at Ngepi camp, an eco lodge unlike anything we'd seen before. Instead of tents, we had a treehouse built on wooden stilts above the river. Ours was number 5.5, another one of the owner's jokes. The room was nothing but a bed under a thatched roof, open to the river on all sides. No solid walls, just a mosquito net, a solar-powered shower, and nature in full surround sound. we were in awe. We quickly set up the gas stove for tea, took a quick shower and then sat on the deck watching the river drift by, hippos surfacing every few minutes with their unmistakable grunts. This magical spot held us captive all afternoon as we scanned the opposite bank with binoculars, mesmerized by its rich wildlife. As the sun disappeared and the horizon darkened, our rumbling stomachs finally drew us to the campsite restaurant. Dinner was a delight. Tender buck meat with gem squash, creamy mashed potatoes and sweet carrots, followed by pineapple crumble with custard. Full and happy, we fell asleep that night to the clicking calls of frogs and the low rumble of hippos echoing across the water. Nature's own bedtime symphony. Before sunrise, those same sounds slowly woke us. It was magical listening to the nocturnal animals gradually give way to the first morning birds. As the sky began to lighten, we watched the sunrise directly from bed. Warm colors filtering through the trees on the far side of the river, the world shifting gently from blue to gold. When it was time to leave this magical place right by the Okavango River, our hearts felt heavy. Halfway through our journey, we wished we could stay forever. We just started from one of the camps that are in Namibia, the last camp in Namibia, and today we're going back to Botswana. And this is a little bit more 4x4, but it's such easy work for these Toyota Hilux, it's almost not exciting. So, just on the way to the next stop. Ngepi camp marked our last stop in Namibia's Caprivi strip, and with that it was time to turn back into Botswana and dive deeper into the Okavango Delta. Our next destination was a place called Swamp Stop, a small, remote campsite about 100 kilometers further along the river. In Namibia, it's known as the Kubango. In Botswana, it finally becomes the Okavango. Because the drive would be relatively short, we decided to take a detour through Botswana National Park, a small but wildlife-rich reserve right along the border. Even though we arrived just before midday, when animals are usually less active, we were rewarded with a special sighting. For us South Africans, the red lechwe was something entirely new. This beautiful, almost fluffy antelope is native to the Okavango wetlands and perfectly adapted to life in floodplains, able to move effortlessly through water and soft mud. Even during the hotter time of the day, we were lucky to see plenty of wildlife. However, when we stopped for a quick snack and to take some drone footage, drama struck. In the hunt of getting really good footage, we took the drone and we went for a fly to photograph the cars and a really beautiful baobab tree. And unfortunately, as my dad was flying, he went sideways and hit a tree, and now the drone is up in the tree and we're trying to get it.
I can drive you under it. Yes.
Yeah, he flew sideways.
It flew sideways, and normally it sees the tree and it stops. But hang on.
Yes, David, you are here. Oh, it's
Can you hold it a second? Oh fuck.
Luckily, with some clever maneuvering and a few scratches later, David managed to retrieve the drone and we could continue our journey. Soon we exited the Botswana park and crossed the border back into Botswana. The difference was immediate. The roads grew rougher, potholes appeared more frequently, and one thing stood out in particular: donkeys. Lots of them. In this part of Botswana, they seem to be a major form of transport, wandering calmly along the roadside. By now, we had already covered close to 500 kilometers. Thanks to our dual fuel tanks, we weren't running low, but we still took the opportunity to refuel in the small riverside village of Chobe. Because the goal of this trip was the Okavango Delta, we turned back into Botswana just after having crossed through all of the Caprivi strip. And back in Botswana, we did some more camping and saw the swamp stop, a very beautiful little speck somewhere along the main road, but very much lonely. And that's where we slept with the sound of hippos grazing at night. Swamp Stop welcomed us with exactly that feeling: quiet, open, and wonderfully remote. The campsite stretched along the riverbank, and once again we had the place almost entirely to ourselves. Apart from a few friendly camp cats, some curious stray dogs, and the unmistakable sounds of hippos in the water, there was nothing but nature around us. Swamp Stop would be our home for the next 2 nights. That evening, we enjoyed some steak at the small campsite restaurant, cats curling around our feet. Later, we fell asleep to the rhythmic sound of hippos grazing in the darkness, a gentle reminder that we were right on the edge of the Okavango. The next day, I was excited to do some exploring in the bush. So far, we had mostly been driving on tar roads, and I was aching to test out the Toyota Hilux's capabilities. So, in our now 2-vehicle convoy, we embarked on a small side quest. We drove out of Swamp Stop and followed an old sandy road. From satellite images, we could see a faint path toward a branch of the river that we wanted to explore. Off we went. As some of you might be wondering, I figured I would explain why I am so often in South Africa or Southern Africa. And it's because my mom is from South Africa, so we have Afrikaans culture. And oftentimes we come down here just to visit family and to go on safari and to really enjoy this culture. Part of it is driving in a 4x4 car. So I have the privilege to show you what it's like. A couple of minutes of driving later, we arrived at a beautiful riverside spot in the bushveld and took to the air to see more of the surroundings. We enjoyed a quick grape tizer by this small river and watched a stunning pod of yellow butterflies. As you can see, we are currently smack in the middle of a bushveld. We drove the Toyotas here, and we were only able to get here through these super sandy roads and non-roads because of the 4x4 properties of the cars that we're here with. And we are smack in the middle of the bushveld of the Okavango Delta. It is in fact the only delta that disappears into nothingness. Normally a river ends in the ocean, but this delta just disappears.
Because of the capabilities of our cars, we are able to drive off-road and into these sandy places and find gorgeous, gorgeous spots like this riverbank.
A quick drone flight later, it was time to test the Toyota's capabilities. And what better way to do that than by driving in circles, deepening the tracks until getting stuck in the sand. And stuck we got. On the second pass by through this sandy spot, my speed significantly dropped as the wheels were spinning, not getting any grip, and eventually the vehicle electronically shut off the accelerator so that the wheels stopped spinning without me even telling them to. I was in high gear using 4x4, but without the diff lock engaged.
As you can tell, Botswana is pretty sandy, and that is where 4x4 and diff lock and even low gears are very important.
Watch what happens when I try to follow David's instruction by dropping the clutch and flooring the accelerator in high gear.
Just put in reverse and let go of the clutch. Just let go of the clutch.
You can hear the engine revving, but soon after the wheels start spinning, the system notices that there is no grip and you can hear an audible noise, blocking the wheels from spinning further and rendering my flooring the accelerator useless. This way, the vehicle stops you from getting even deeper in the sand, which is what would happen if you spin the wheels further. It is now time to engage the diff lock and put the car in its low gears. In its low gears, the wheels now spin much slower, allowing better grip, and with the added differential lock, they all spin at the same speed rather than each individually.
That was a little bit closer than I wanted it to be. We wanted to kind of get a tiny little bit stuck in the sand so we could actually show off what these cars can do, and I ended up getting more stuck than I wanted to. But I just shifted into my lower gears and I put on the diff lock and I just got out. So, let's continue.
We had successfully gotten stuck in the sand and used our Toyota Hilux's capabilities to get out. Of course, this was nowhere near a truly dangerous situation of being stuck in sand, but it was fun and interesting to see the difference low gears and a diff lock can make. But now it is time for a braai. Back at the campsite, I set up our tent again while David prepared the braai fire. A nice cup of coffee and a braai conversation later, the coals were ready and the meat started to sizzle. as the dark came creeping in, we had our dinner together and couldn't resist feeding some scraps to the sweet stray dogs that had been keeping us company all this time.
Wil je try something?
Waar moet je? En voor de volgende maand.
Can you show that?
Sit. No, wait. Lay down. Lay down.
Yes, that's what I do.
After Swamp Stop, we drove towards Maun, one of the larger cities of Botswana, just because we wanted to do a little stopover there. And finally, our destination was Moremi National Park. From Swamp Stop to Maun and then onwards to Moremi, we had around 450 kilometers ahead of us. And these weren't easy motorway kilometers, like back home in Austria or on the German motorway. Instead, we were met with tar roads so full of potholes that it was often smoother to drive on the dirt next to the road than to weave around the holes themselves. Many long hours of driving later, fueled by plenty of biltong and grape tizer, we finally reached Maun. Maun is one of Botswana's larger towns and the place we would eventually fly home from, as it has an international airport. For now though, it was simply a stopover. We stayed at a campsite on the outskirts of town, having covered roughly 320 kilometers from Swamp Stop to get there. This campsite felt very different from everything we'd experienced so far. After days of wild, remote campsites surrounded by nature, this was a fenced plot of land bordered by busy roads and city life. We set up our tents once more, enjoyed a slice of milk tart from a nearby supermarket, and talked about the adventures still ahead of us. Dinner was at the campsite restaurant and we headed to bed early, planning to leave at dawn. Sleep, however, was hard to come by. The city stayed loud well into the night. Dogs barking and howling for hours, cars racing through the streets, and just when the dogs finally fell silent, the roosters took over, announcing the morning long before sunrise. It made for a restless night and a sharp contrast to the calm we'd grown used to in the bush. By morning, we couldn't wait to leave Maun behind and return to the peace and quiet of nature. So we had one last campsite, and currently we are in Khwai. It is a special place just very close by Moremi National Park, but we also drove through Moremi National Park, and we did some intense 4x4 driving with a little bit of mud and lots of sand. Worry not though, we had no issues going through that with our 4x4 capable vehicles. Early the next morning, we left Maun behind and continued towards the Khwai concession, a wild but inhabited area bordering Moremi National Park. The tar road quickly gave way to gravel, and once we turned off towards Moremi, the surface became sandy. Driving instantly became slower and more demanding. Just watch my steering wheel getting a mind of its own. On sandy roads like these, lowering tire pressure makes a huge difference, so I pulled over to do just that. Okay, so we are on a really bad road. Actually, it's not that bad, but we're on a road, a sandy road, a gravel road, and we decided, because of all of these small bumps, we're going to lower the pressure in our tires. Should we go down to 1.8?
Yeah.
Okay, down to 1.8 on all tires. We do have an air compressor, so we can pump it up ourselves again. What a great start to the day. With lower tire pressure, the ride immediately became more manageable. A while later, we reached the entrance to Moremi Game Reserve. To get to Khwai, we first had to drive straight through the park. And what a beautiful park it is. We saw some wildlife and had a special encounter with a herd of elephants crossing the road in front of us. There was a young calf still figuring out how to use its trunk. If you listen closely, you can hear its excited trumpeting. For the rest of our drive through Moremi, wildlife sightings were sparse, but the driving itself was entertaining. Muddy puddles broke up the sandy tracks, and deep ruts in the road hinted at just how challenging these routes must be during the rainy season. Just before reaching Khwai, we drove over a single-vehicle wooden bridge that was absurdly long and a bit of a challenge to drive over safely. And finally, we are now in Khwai, just about to have dinner at a nice restaurant, and then we will wait for dark and go on a night drive. So, we've seen loads of wildlife during the day, but what can we see at night? A relaxing afternoon flew by and we couldn't wait for a well-prepared meal at the guest house. Suddenly, we felt a bit fancy as the chef himself presented each course along with carefully selected wines for the evening.
Okay, let me take this moment to announce what we have for tonight. For starter, we have tomato and white bean soup with freshly warmed bread rolls. For main course, we have honey chicken, brown rice, vegetable stir fry, baby marrow lasagna. Lastly, for dessert, we have pear and almond pudding served with cream. Sounds delicious. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
That's a lasagna. For the starter, there was a comforting tomato and bean soup, while the main course offered honey chicken with brown rice and vegetable stir-fry, or an option for lasagna. Dessert was a delicate cake paired with almond pudding. After this fantastic dinner, we were ready for our night drive. Equipped with a blanket, my camera and binoculars, I could hardly wait to see some nocturnal animals. And sure enough, after just a few minutes of driving through the Khwai concession bushveld, our game ranger discovered a female spotted hyena using his large torch. Not long after, a deep, resonant roar echoed through the night, unmistakably a male lion. The ranger explained that 2 lion brothers lived in this area, regularly calling for each other. Roaring at night is also a way for lions to mark their territory and alert other lions of their presence. Following the calls, we eventually found him lying in the bush. I'd be lying if I said this experience didn't make my eyes water a little. The lion didn't seem to mind our presence and continued calling into the night. His roars were so deep and powerful that the vibrations could be felt in our chests. It was a truly indescribable, tear-jerking moment. We lingered a little longer before respectfully leaving him in peace. After watching a pride of lions hunting in Chobe National Park the previous week, we didn't expect anything to top it. But Botswana kept surprising us. That night, we rested well, ready for the next morning's game drive. The sun was still low when we woke, the air fresher than before, and my binoculars and camera were at the ready. We thought nothing could surpass the previous night, but within 15 minutes of setting out, our guide discovered cheetah footprints in the sand. Excitement surged, and just moments later, we found a mother cheetah resting with her daughter in the bush. Cheetahs are particularly shy, and this was my first sighting in the wild. Look at their beautiful fur patterns and those signature black tear lines down their faces, acting like natural sunglasses. Shortly after this discovery, we spotted another new animal that I'd never seen before, the Kori bustard. It is the largest flying bird native to Africa and, as our ranger proudly noted, Botswana's national bird. The drive continued, and after seeing some more familiar game like giraffes, elephants and zebras, our guide received a leopard sighting nearby. What followed was an exhilarating drive along narrow paths, hoping to glimpse this elusive cat. Seeing a leopard in daylight is rare, given their stealthy nature. Our guide made it his mission to find this leopard for us to view, as can be seen by his driving style. The exhilarating drive was more than worth it. Just a few minutes later, as we crept slowly along the road in search of the leopard, there she was, moving through the bush with purpose. She seemed completely unbothered by the vehicles, confident and utterly captivating. By the way, distinguishing cheetahs from leopards is quite easy. Cheetahs have the black sunglasses lines for sun protection, spotted fur instead of rosettes, and a lean body built for sprinting. Leopards, on the other hand, lack the facial lines, sport rosette patterns, and have a muscular frame designed to haul prey up trees. As a fan of my cats at home, seeing a leopard in its natural habitat was a dream come true. After watching her stalk prey for a while, we left her to continue her hunt and began our journey back to the Khwai guest house. On the way, luck struck again with a sighting of the African buffalo, part of Africa's Big Five alongside lions, leopards, elephants and rhinos. Later that afternoon, one last activity waited, a mokoro ride. A mokoro is a traditional dugout canoe originally carved from a single tree trunk and used for centuries by local people for fishing, hunting and transporting goods along the rivers and floodplains. Today, mokoros are mostly used to bring tourists up close to river wildlife, gliding quietly through the reeds and lily-covered channels without disturbing the animals. I was thrilled, and rightly so. Our guide poled us gently through the water, bringing us incredibly close to wildlife. First, we approached a hippo pool. Even at a safe distance, observing them surface and doze in the shallow water was exhilarating, knowing these are among Africa's most dangerous animals. As we glided along, our guide named every plant and animal we asked about, enriching the peaceful environment with knowledge. I was particularly amazed when he pointed out a tiny white reed frog. Remember the clicking that we've been hearing since the start of the trip each night? Yep, it's these frogs that make the clicking noise. Bird life along the river was vibrant. Though difficult to photograph, we spotted little bee-eaters, African jacanas, and even a lilac-breasted roller. Another first for me was the African open-bill, a stork that uses that unique gap in its bill to feed on snail shells. Here's a short clip of our guide demonstrating how the open-bill feeds.
This space, they'll be taken up, get inside here, then he start to do this. Once it's open, he peels out, then he pulls out the live snail, the live muscle that would be inside. Then here comes the water snail, the shell for the water snail. Here, the crushing point. When he crush, he pulls. Then just listen to something. No, outside on the jungle. It's a lion.
Oh,
yeah. So those are the two ones, the mussel and this water snail. So they only eat those two. After eating this, they go on top of the trees only to rest. Then later at night, they sleep on their nest on the tall trees. So they make nest at the very top of the trees. So which makes they just come out early in the morning just to pick this. Then they go up for rest.
As if Botswana wasn't done spoiling us yet, it offered one final unforgettable highlight. A large African elephant calmly grazing in the river. From our boat tour in Chobe, we knew this behavior is often seen in older elephants who favor soft, wet grass as their teeth wear down over time. Drifting silently in the mokoro, everything around us was so still and quiet that, were it not for the elephant's sheer size, it would have been easy to miss him altogether. Alas, as the sun dipped, it was time for one last dinner at the Khwai guest house. We began with a vegetable pastry, followed by beef with noodles, vegetables and potato casserole. Dessert was a decadent amarula cheesecake, a truly fitting grand finale. We spent the evening around the campfire with a cup of tea, sharing stories from the past 2 weeks and already planning the next adventure. One more time I gazed at the seemingly infinite night sky before turning in for the night. The next day, it was time to drive back to Maun and tackle the long wooden bridge once more. This time, I even got some cool drone footage from above. And so started the long road back to Maun. The bumpiness of Moremi quickly turned into muddy puddles, and naturally, I had to drive through them. The tricky part is though that you never know what lies beneath the surface, and some of these puddles turned out to be far deeper than expected.
Oh, damn. Okay. It was slightly deeper water than I expected, but we're fine.
Oh man. How much is the...
80 euros. So,
Because we ripped out the screws.
yeah? Shit. Yeah. The option was either to go through here, which we don't know how deep it is. It seems quite deep though. To go through here, and I opted for this version, and it was a little bit lower than I expected.
Luckily, the damage wasn't too bad, and after a bit of gentle persuasion, the wing fell nicely back into place and we continued driving.
Another 65 kilometers.
After what felt like an eternity, we reached the Moana checkpoint, where we sterilized our shoes and the vehicle's tires. This is standard procedure to prevent the spread of foot and mouth disease affecting livestock. On with the journey, we were now back on the sandy, super bumpy roads where we had to lower our tire pressure. This time, with the perfect conditions and just us on the road, we had a blast. At last, we arrived back in Maun, where we had the vehicles washed before returning them. It was time to say our goodbyes to this incredible adventure and step onto the plane. And just like that, our African adventure comes to an end. From the roar of a lion at night to elephants teaching their calves to use their trunks in the Okavango, Southern Africa has left us in awe. Even the smallest moments stayed with us. A dung beetle making its way across a sandy track, a hippo surfacing in the water, or the sight of a bird we had never heard of before. Africa had it all. We shared quiet morning coffees in the bush and challenged our 4x4 vehicles through muddy pools just hours later. Maybe most of all, we enjoyed experiencing it together, guessing bird calls, spotting wildlife through the walkie-talkie, or simply relaxing by the campfire after a long day of travel. Returning to Maun marked the end of the journey, but the memories of wildlife, quiet riversides, and endless adventure will stay with us long after we've left Botswana. And as we board the plane to fly back toward the Alps, I'm already planning my next trip back. If you've enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe to my channel or consider joining as a member. As always, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.